Oh, that was the wrong button. Hello, friends. We're working on getting set up here, but we hit the wrong broadcast button.
Can you all hear
So,
me?
yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? So sorry, everybody, if you got on here a little bit early. We accidentally hit the broadcast button, so we're live. But just give us a few moments here while we sort everything out. Thank you. We'll start at 6. All right, hello everybody. We're still working on getting everybody in. Anselm, can you hear us? Anselm, maybe you can try plugging in headphones so we can see you. And I know that now your microphone is not working as well. Still working on getting everybody in, so please hold just. All right, everybody, we're going to rock and roll. We'll keep working on these audio and technical issues. Sometimes this happens with technology, as those of you who have been trying to work remotely have experienced, but it's time to get rolling. So Anselm, I think that if you have difficulty with your audio, which it looks like you may, why don't you just go ahead and get your phone and call. We can see you on camera, but if you get your phone and call in, you can have that information right up above or below. We can check out that information. Let me get you that. Look in that box over there for the call in information. It's also going to be in your email with the presenter link that I had sent you. So you can call in and you can talk and we can hear you and you can be able to hear us. But he can't hear me. Oh, so very exciting to have this technology component for us, but all right, in, everybody. So we're going to get them on board. But thank you so much for those of you who have joined us here today. I really appreciate you starting to talk with us here about a crisis in leadership. One of the issues that we have been having and that I have been talking about is how we have been left high and dry here in Southwest Florida and across the United States as well, actually. So let me start off by introducing myself while we're getting our additional panelists sorted out. So my name is Dr. Cindy Banyai. I'm a candidate for Congress here in Southwest Florida. I'm a mom and small business owner, and I'm fighting for our water, our health, and our community. And I am being compelled to run here in Southwest Florida for Congress because of the work that I've been doing in our community. So for the past 11 years, I've been working with nonprofits across our region. I've worked with hundreds of organizations, and through my work, I've convened thousands of people, bringing together small groups of people everywhere in our region: Fort Myers, Hendry County, Immokalee, Naples, all the way up to Charlotte County, really trying to hear what people in our community have to say and what they want and need in our community. And as a researcher, I would write reports on this, and I would take these reports to the leaders. I would tell people that I'm going to bring their voice to be on the same level as politicians and CEOs. And I would take that report to leaders, and they would basically just pat me on the head and say thanks and not do anything about it. So I am running to be the servant leader that the Southwest Florida community deserves. And that is what's really compelling me. I have a lot of other components to me that we'll talk about. I'm sure they will come out, but really it's that service component that's driving me in this race. And I see such a embedded power structure here in Southwest Florida. I'm really working to help to raise above it. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to run for U.S. House, not only because I have the qualification and the commitment, but I know that through a leadership position like that, I'm going to have a positive effect on all the leadership in our local level as well. So that's a big deal for me, to be data informed in our leadership and to be really connected to the people. And I think I hear we got Rachel on, and let's have Rachel, let's see if, I know that she was having trouble with her video, but I think she's here by audio. Rachel Brown, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much for being here. And I know that actually one of the reasons why we had a little bit of trouble connecting you up is because you're actually out participating in our community around some movements. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm here in Cape Coral at Fort Freedom Park. They're having a protest. They just went around the corner about a half hour ago. Small group, about maybe 25 people. I'm out here in Cape Coral.
Great, supporting people and their activism.
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself. This is, I know that you've just started your campaign, so this is a great opportunity to connect with people in our region to tell them about you. So tell us who you are and what you're running for.
Okay, awesome. My name is Rachel Brown. I'm running for Florida Senate, District 27. So that's Lee County, and that includes Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Sanibel. So I guess one of the reasons I'm running, so I got asked by the Florida Democratic Environmental Caucus to run because of my environmental record. I am studying environmental engineering at Florida Gulf Coast University, and I have taken part in lots of climate strikes. I started the Fort Myers Sunrise Hub, and I've done other kind of organizing with climate. Recently, I've been marching with Black Lives Matter. I think that marching is a huge part of any change. It's kind of where it starts, when you start organizing people. And so the reason I said yes is because I've seen so many people in the community, kind of like what you were describing, Cindy, just like being overlooked, not being represented, not being listened to. And I think that it's time for change. I think that it's time that we actually represent our community.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And so glad that you were recruited by the Democratic Environmental Caucus. And they're big supporters of community movements and our environment. And I'm proudly endorsed by the Democratic Environmental Caucus as well, because of my record standing up for the environment. Our water is one of the biggest issues for me. And also, aside from just talking about it, I've actually been involved in advocating for alignment of organizations to the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're not familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, actually, you can see my little insignia here. I've aligned my policies to the Sustainable Development Goals, but they are the 17 global goals that are working to help ensure that we are working together with global partners on the biggest issues of the day that are all interconnected, by the way. So it includes climate change, it includes water, it includes animals, it includes consumption and production and jobs and environment, water, environment on land, and peace and stability and equality. I'm wearing 2 of those pins here today as well. And I've aligned my plan, and I've also advocated and helped organizations across Southwest Florida and the United States align their plans to this. I'm also serving as a representative to the United Nations on behalf of the International Association for Community Development, which is a group of academics and practitioners who advocate for community participation in all levels of governance, from local level up to international level. And so I'm advocating for community participation in the global arena around the United Nations. And through that, I've participated in the high-level political forum of sustainable climate change and sustainable development for all, focusing on those environmental components around climate change and mitigation, and bringing the voice of people and community to that space. So I've actually done that on several occasions. I'm also in the process of helping the organization that I represent get accreditation with the United Nations Environmental Program, which is just another way that we can, again, advocate for community spaces in big environmental issues around the world. And so that's where I'm working on my leadership and my leadership has been in this civil society space. So while we're getting Anselm back on here, Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about your leadership? Where do you think that you have been effective as a leader in your life and career? It looks like you're self-muted now. Rachel. Oh my goodness. Rachel, if you can unmute yourself, we can hear you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry about that.
The right number of.
Yeah, so about being a leader, well, I guess growing up, I was a leader in Bible study groups. And then I was an orientation leader in college, interestingly enough. So I think it's always been a kind of part of my life, stepping up to fight for what I think is right. When I was actually, I would say the first thing that was like a step up for me, me taking a stance against something, when I was 12 years old, I stumbled across factory farm videos. And so I stopped eating meat since I was so that's like 14 years now. So I would say if I see something that I know is wrong, I don't want to participate in it at the very least. And now I've kind of moved forward to actually activism and organizing other people around an issue. And, now it's kind of shifted towards leading climate strikes and getting other people involved. Because I think a lot of people want to do something for climate, but they don't know what to do. A lot of times it's very hard to get involved in anything political. It's hard to find out what's going on. It's hard to find out what you should be doing. But when you organize around a topic like climate change, it's something that a lot of people can get on board with, and you just go out and strike. And then you meet other people and you find out what other people are doing in the community. And then you find ways to work together and to help each other on your goals. And it leads you to the right places. It's led me to not just organizing for climate, but joining in with leaders in the Black Lives Matter movement and following, protesting with them. So yeah, I that's about it, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And you're taking that, and I'm still working on getting Anselm in. Now he's called in, but I can't see him live either.
Oh man, we can just trade off. It's okay.
You know, we're trying to get him to call in too.
I'm here.
So,
you can hear me.
Oh, good. Yes, we can hear you. Fantastic.
There you go.
Great, Anselm. Good. That's perfect. Okay, Anselm, so go ahead. Why don't you tell us, introduce yourself, tell us what you're running for, and what brought you to the service.
Yeah, I am running for Florida House District 76 that covers Sanibel and Malacca Island, along with Fort Myers Beach, San Carlos Park, and Bonita Springs north of Old 41. That's kind of the schematics of my district. Yeah, I got, similarly to Rachel, I got approached from the Democratic Environmental Caucus as they're recruiting candidates to run this upcoming session. And I thought, what the hell, and I'll run. And I thought, yeah, more so why the reason I run, because, I mean, not just for Florida, but the whole country, I think, needs real progressive leadership, someone who puts people over profit in our environment at highest regards. And I don't see that across the nation, and I definitely don't see it down here in Florida, specifically Southwest Florida. And I think it's really worth our time to represent Florida in terms of our progressive policies that we need to push. And because there's also plenty of working people that are struggling. We have a very high uninsured rate. We have an affordable housing crisis going on down here. And as we can see from the leadership from the GOP in the state, that it is woefully incompetent and not interested in the people that are being affected by this crisis. They weren't caring before this crisis, and they're definitely not caring for it now. And yeah, that's why I got myself into running for the State House legislature.
Oh, great. And I just want to make sure that we mentioned that Rachel's running for Senate District 27. That's right?
Yes.
Perfect. And you know what's so fantastic about these two candidates is that they were recruited as part of that big initiative that was led locally by Margie Stein and Jeanette Dr. Janelle Christensen, and supported by 90 for 90 and Dr. Fergie Reed. So that helped us fill almost every single position open across the state of Florida. So everything but I believe one House seat is filled with a Democratic contender. So we're not handing any seats over to the Republicans without a fight this election. So I really am so appreciative of the efforts of that group of people with 90 for 90 and all of them for their efforts in making sure that we did not hand any of those seats over. And for the candidates like Rachel and Anselm for stepping up. So thank you guys so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. That is leadership.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, we're so happy to have all this support, support from people like you who have a lot of experience working with the community, and your involvement with Occupy is super impressive to me as someone who has been a big part of climate strikes and just protesting in general. To see somebody who is kind of a lot more experienced than I am and has actually passed legislation through being part of a grassroots movement, that's really exciting for me. And also having the help of Janelle, and the Environmental Caucus and 90 for 90. It's really exciting. It's a really exciting time for us.
Yeah, and let me give everybody that little background on Occupy. It's so funny. There's so many things that I'm passionate about and have been committed to in our region and around the world, making our world a better place, that I don't actually get enough opportunities to talk about the work that I did with Occupy here. So those of you that may remember, Occupy Fort Myers was that, part of the movement of Occupy that came right after the downturn, the economic downturn in 2008, 2009. I believe it started up in Fort Myers in 2011. We had a camp out in Centennial Park. And I was there helping, being part of the movement and really trying to use my skills as an organizer to try to help hone in on the anger, the anxiety, and how this group of us who were really upset with the situation and the economic situation in particular at that time, how we were feeling and what we would want out of our occupation, essentially. And for as long as that had went on, and I actually was somebody who came back because my daughter was really little at the time, but I was there almost every single day coming in. We were, aside from being part of it, I did a series of research on it and tried and was piloting some participatory practices. So again, we could come up with how do we understand from an amorphous group of people and capture what they want and need and then focus it forward. So I did that piece of it, and then we took it a step further from there, which was I was part of a group of 11 people who were in Occupy Fort Myers who sued the city of Fort Myers for First Amendment right violation. And that was after we were evicted from the park and we were told we could go to the city hall, and we were kind of shuffled around. We received citations for trespassing in the park because they had denied our permit. And what this ended up coming to after, I think it was like an 18-month process of suing the city with some folks who are actually, involved now and supported through ACL work there. But we won a settlement from the city for damages for our First Amendment rights being violated. And we force them to change the permitting process, and meaning that you are not allowed to be denied a permit by because of what you say, the content of your speech, right? And that was a really big deal. And not only that did we win this battle locally here in Fort Myers on that, but our piece of the pie in terms of legally speaking became one of the most important and successful legal fights that come out of the Occupy movement that had been cited, by the way, across the country in terms of precedent and case law to demonstrate that we do not have to qualify our speech in order to have access to public places. And that was a big deal for us. And I was very proud to have been through it. And if you've never been involved in a lawsuit like this, it's not an easy thing. It's not a really necessarily fun thing. The funniest part about it for me was in the deposition, there was like a 3-hour deposition when I was like 8 months pregnant. But they pulled all my research and they were demanding to tell them who funded the research. And I was just sitting there delighted that somebody was reading it. Because it was just, I was just a freelance community developer who wanted to help our community and did some research and reporting around it. And so, at least I was filed into that legal framework there. But we'll move on. We'll have Rachel, and what I had talked about before, and the reason that Rachel and I were talking about it previously is that for me, this was a really important piece of leadership and contribution that I had to our local community, because it helps actually, like all of the movements that we see right now with the Black Lives Matter and the other peaceful protests, because they can come to the park. This helps protect them and their speech, and knowing that the city of Fort Myers can't evict them because they don't like what they're saying. And so that was really helpful. And Rachel, you're self-muted now, but if you wanted to have any response or additional comment to that, that would be great.
Yeah, we definitely see the effects of it in our protests and peaceful protests. Lee County, our Facebook group, it's kind of the hub for all the protests that happen in Lee County, and they're usually downtown. They've been very successful, and every protest since Occupy has been able to be very successful because of the legal safety that we have in protesting now. So people have talked about that at the protests that I've been to. So that's, you know, that's a tangible legacy that we have that started out from just a couple people occupying, you know. So to me, it's a perfect example of what can actually come, you know, the legal benefits that can actually eventually come from just going out and just standing for what you believe in, even if it's just a couple of people in the start, you know. It turns into something much bigger if you just keep being persistent and join in the right people. Really good things can happen.
Yep. And I always say that there's kind of layers, right? So every time that you stand up and speak out for your rights, it's important because you say that and you may inspire somebody else. And then there might be somebody who can come up and do the organizing and engage with, you know, like we saw, there was a small group of people that went and engaged with the police department here. There may be somebody else who's picking up the reins on a legal component of it. Everybody has a space and everybody can contribute to the movement. There's no need to take a deficit mentality and conflict, right? No, there's no reason to do that. We can all have a voice and a place, and it's all important. So we amplify one another.
Very well said.
And I just want, thank you. I've honed it for several years at this point too, so thank you. I just wanted to say, I did see a couple questions coming in. So this is, we have this as a virtual town hall, so thank you to our guests who have joined us. We are recording this, so we'll be able to share it afterwards. So if you do have additional questions, we would love to hear from you. You can put them in the question box and we will answer them, and to the best of our ability. I did see one question come in from Barbara, who asked if candidates from Florida 17 are here, and I'll say no, unfortunately. There are no candidates from Florida Congressional District 17 here, which is our friends to the north of us. So 19 is kind of cut out across Fort Myers, and then 17 covers all of Central Florida and kind of underneath Central Sarasota, but includes Punta Gorda and Charlotte County. And Alan Ellison is the Democratic nominee for that area, and he is running against incumbent Greg Stubbe. So we absolutely appreciate you supporting him, because he is going to need a lot of energy and effort to be able to unseat that candidate or that incumbent. But we know that Greg Stubbe has not done anything for the state of Florida. He actually voted against the CARES Act and bringing in additional dollars to help Florida, and he takes money from known polluters as well. So absolutely support him and check him out, but unfortunately he will not be joining us for this session this time, so thank you. I just see another question. Jan was asking about bumper stickers and signs. So maybe before we dive into like our critique on other kinds of leadership, Anselm and Rachel, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about where we can find some additional support material for your campaign, or what you have coming up for your campaign, because we have a question about it now.
Anselm, you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Either one of you, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, so far we have not gotten any kind of swag for our campaign yet regarding like bumper stickers. I just ordered some signage for our campaign. Unfortunately, because we're kind of grassroots candidates, we don't have too many funds yet, so we can start pumping money towards things like that, like merch. But we should be getting that soon enough as we start getting more exposure and we start to get a good amount of following, and we'll be for sure passing all that stuff out and providing resources for the public. So if they want to support our campaigns, which by the way, thank you for having any kind of part of your life dedicated to helping us out, that is very much appreciated. But right now, our campaign does not have that yet, but we will soon, and we'll keep you posted for sure.
Yeah, so for me, I post a lot of stuff on my campaign Facebook. You can search me, Rachel Brown, and then if you just type in Rachel Brown Florida, you'll see a picture of a face with an American flag in the background. That's the one you should follow. And so I've been posting stuff so people can sign up to have bumper stickers on their cars. And I'm also ordering face shields and face masks. So you can sign up for that on my Facebook page. Just put in the comments. I have a Facebook post, so you just like put in the comments, oh, I want to have a bumper sticker, or put up a sign for you in my yard, and I'll get you signed up for that. I'll be making an order this weekend, so that'll be coming next week.
Great, great. That's good to know. And I'll give a pitch for
And
both
just
of you
to,
guys too. These take money,
just
so
to,
contribute candidates, contribute to them, because that's how they can get the ability to do this. Go ahead, Anselm.
sorry, yeah, I didn't mention this, my website is Anselm Weber, statehouse76.com, ANSELM Weber with 1B, statehouse76.com, all low caps, no space. So yeah, please find my website, and as Cindy was great just mentioned, there is a donate button, and I will not say no to any contributions, but if you are on the strings in terms of your finances, I would encourage you, just bear caution. I do not want to take anyone's money if that's all they have, for sure. But any donation would be very much appreciated, because my GOP opponents have much more cash on hand, and they have a much more anti-poor, anti-environment agenda. So just check out my website, look through it, and yeah, donate if you can and are able to do so. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. So let's jump in, and just before we jump into the next question, I do want to give a special shout out. I see Maureen Porras, who is running for House District 105, is here joining us as well as one of the attendees. So thank you for joining us and supporting us. She's also another one of the fantastic candidates that's filling a very important space and trying to flip a district here in Florida. And she's running a fantastic campaign and had a lot of really great endorsements come out recently. So congratulations, Maureen. She's really doing a great job there. And Maureen and I are women fighting together for Southwest Florida and South Florida overall. We saw a question coming in about coronavirus stuff. And this is really one of the places where I wanted to jump in and talk about the crisis of leadership that we have. And for me, when I think about the coronavirus response, this will, and I've said this from the very beginning of the pandemic, this will go down in history as the biggest failure in history, and it lands directly at Trump's feet. And then on down, by the way, all of his cronies all the way down. But we will be looked at for years to come with incredulation as to why did one of the most economically powerful and strong democratic countries in the world so significantly flub to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of deaths a response to the pandemic when they had the information and they had the capacity to do so. And it really, for me, it just comes down to poor leadership. It comes down to Donald Trump prioritizing himself and his reelection and his wealth and his friends' wealth over an actual response. It was image management from the very beginning, and putting cronies into places, using nepotism, putting Jared Kushner in charge of anything was a mistake. You know, he was in charge, and somebody was asking specifically about the PPP. One of the reasons that was such a problem is that Jared was trying to procure that, and he has no idea about supply chain management. And that caused massive shortages in the earlier components of this pandemic. And what we're seeing right now, if people not wearing a mask and not believing that the pandemic is real, for me, goes all the way back to leadership. If we had leadership in the very beginning that said, this is real, take it serious, take care of your neighbor, then we wouldn't be fighting this culture battle around masks. So maybe Rachel and Anselm, talk a little bit about that. What do you think is going on, and how could our leadership around the coronavirus pandemic have been better?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous on every level. I mean, it's, if they want to play the economy game, we have to get back to the economy. It's going to hurt the economy if we don't respond to something right away. It already has. People are on unemployment and they're getting more from unemployment than they were getting from their job because they're not getting a livable wage. And I think hopefully it's making people see how important it is to have a livable wage and to have things like public housing. I think a lot of people, I mean, yeah, you have a lot of people getting evicted all over. So you're going to have, thousands of homeless families, not just homeless people, but families that are homeless, and it could have all been avoided if we had just responded right away. And it really is kind of evidence of the necessity of putting experts in their field. So right, you don't put an economist to deal with a public health emergency. You don't put a nurse to deal with an economy issue, so you need experts in their field working in these government positions, not just whoever knows who or whoever owes somebody a favor, because you have people's lives at risk. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, sure, if we had just responded right away, we probably would be fine by now. We probably would have had everybody quarantined that needed to be. Probably would have had, if we had quicker testing. We would not be at the unemployment level, at the infection level, at the death rate, that we are now, if we had just responded the way that we needed to initially.
Yeah, absolutely. Anselm, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you see leadership in terms of the pandemic having been a failure?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the same sentiments Rachel mentioned. Yeah, I mean, at every level, we've had an abdication of leadership. I mean, other countries, even conservative governments like Britain, Britain tried to do the herd immunity thing at first, but then realized that was not a go. And I mean, we could have had, for one thing, before all this started, we should have provided universal health care for all Americans, and especially all Floridians down here. And on top of that, we should have had mandatory payments to renters and homeowners during this crisis, because the economy is shut down, and even the ones that are open again, I mean, they're going to be shut down soon enough. Yeah, I think that plenty of things could have been helped out at this point. I mean, like Rachel said, with public housing, I think this crisis was born well before the COVID-19 crisis, with affordable housing crisis, with the healthcare access. I think if we just simply had everyone stay home, we covered their rent and mortgage, we provided universal health care, we had contact tracing, we just understood that this is not a normal situation where we can just continue the typical go back to work kind of idea. We simply have just, across the board, and the national level, the state level, the county level, we've just abdicated our duty, and we've, in the meantime, given trillions of dollars to corporations who don't really need the bailout, but have gotten the bailout instead, while working families, low-income families all across the board are basically becoming sacrificial lambs for the economy, just for a few digits to the GDP. I mean, it is absurd. This is something progressives have been screaming about, and this COVID has just become a giant cocktail of more things progressives are screaming about. Like, we need healthcare for all. We need affordable housing. We need rent relief when crises like these start. The GOP's agenda. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, something I want to add to that is a huge part of leadership is realizing that something is a problem, even if it's not affecting you. And so with coronavirus, it's not affecting everybody the same way. Sure, a lot of people are fine. A lot of people get sick and then they're fine. But then they think that's it, and if they're in a position of power, then they have the authority to just tell people, oh, you know, it's no big deal, I got over it, oh, I knew people that got over it, you know, but it's not affecting you maybe, but it's affecting somebody else and somebody else's family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge part of leadership, I think, is realizing that even though it's probably not going to affect you, it's going to affect other people, and it's going to be a big deal when it does.
Yeah, it could be, you know, for that's, you know, where I'm at too. You know, my youngest daughter had health issues early in her life. And so she's in that vulnerable category. She's only 3, you know, but it's very likely that somebody could pass that to her and it could end her life, you know. And this is, so yeah, this for me has been a very serious lapse in judgment across the board for people saying, well, I'm going to be healthy, I'll be fine. But it might not be fine for somebody else, you know, especially with our senior population. There's a lot of people who have elevated risk, and we should care a little bit about somebody beside our own individual self, our own family. But I also want to talk and loop this around because I did, you know, talked about Trump and him being the head, the figurehead of this biggest failure in history. But let's not forget his little buddy, Ron Santos, right? And that's who you guys are going to have to deal with in the state legislature. And he's been basically just doing whatever Trump has told him to do. He is, you know, following along. He gave the order yesterday that schools must open 5 days a week in person, right? Like his big daddy told him to. And, you know, he's also been fudging the data, which, by the way, as somebody who's worked trying to analyze state data in a whole bunch of different areas, I could have told you that, and I have been telling people that from the very beginning, that the data that the state of Florida was putting out about the coronavirus was complete garbage. Not complete. There were parts of it that were okay, but they've never been transparent about it. They've never been somebody saying, hey, here's the information, you decide. It's like, oh, no, we're only going to give you this information. And even if we have to legally provide you with other pieces of information, we're going to make it as challenging as possible for you to get it and understand it. That's been their MO for decades now. So anyway, there's my soapbox piece on that, but that's leadership as well. That's leadership, and that determines the culture of the administration, and that determines how everybody else in the state of Florida can function based on the information that they put out. So now we have, you know, his little buddy, Ron DeSantis, doing exactly what Daddy Trump tells him to do, and we're in now the epicenter. Here we are. We've arrived. We are at the epicenter of the coronavirus. Now, in the beginning, everybody was saying, oh, no, it's not going to happen. We were just sending the spring breakers back home to have the epicenter be in New York City and other places like that. But now here we are. We're front and center because of the decisions made by Ron DeSantis. And we're even seeing it locally with who's passing mask ordinances or not passing mask ordinances, or additional closures of beaches and places. We know that Fort Myers said no. Cape Coral said no. Naples said no. Sanibel said yes. And there's some issues around that with enforcement, and I totally am understanding and respectful of that. But I feel like there's, again, been an abdication of leadership from top to bottom. So Rachel and Anselm, tell me a little bit about your feelings on Ron DeSantis and his leadership in these circumstances.
Ooh.
You want to tee off, Rachel?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, clearly it's been bad. I mean, if you see a trend of more infections each day, you know, then to me that's an obvious indicator that we're doing something wrong, you know. And so our governments are not listening to obvious indicators because they're taking orders from people above them. And so to me, that just shows a huge flaw in the way that we have systems set up, where we're just told by people who don't live here in our counties what we in our county need to do and what the safest thing is for us to do. You know, and so I think that if our governments worked the way that they're supposed to, you know, you have local leaders, you know, who make decisions on a local level, and they don't just have to follow suit with whatever the president is telling them to do. But it's not working that way. It's working almost like the president just has more fingers and he can just, you know, put them wherever he wants and just do whatever he wants, even though it's definitely not what's best for the people. So yeah, I think it's very easy for somebody who's far off, not in your community, to tell you what to do in your community, you know. But really, we're seeing the effects of it. And so we need to put people in power who are going to challenge leadership and who are not just going to say, well, they're the boss, so I'm going to do what they say. Because our leaders are supposed to be leaders, you know, individual leaders, you know, for themselves and not just follow suit.
Mm-hmm. And I want to respond to that, and then Anselm will let you have a crack at this one. But you know, one thing that I think about, and that when I look at the leadership failure is a failure of coordinated strategy. But I want to make an important differentiation between what Rachel's saying in terms of local rule, home rule, in terms of how we, you know, talk about it here in Florida, and a coordinated strategy. Because I think a lot of people on the right, they're worried about this. You know, they're talking and saying crazy stuff: communism, socialism, tyranny, blah blah blah. Because people have been talking about having a coordinated strategy in response to the coronavirus. It's different to say that. So having a coordinated strategy means this is what we do, and everybody agrees that this is what needs to be done because of the urgency of the moment, because of the health issues, because of the potential loss of life and the complete destruction of our economy. And this is why I say it ends up being a crisis of leadership, is because it takes leadership to, first of all, recognize the problem. We said that earlier, coordinate on the solution, and then implement it and lead the people on that solution. So the reason that this has been such a wobbly, you know, table spinning out of control, right, is because that leadership component, the telling everybody what needs to happen and how it's going to happen and how we're going to rally together, and providing that kind of like inspirational push to do things that are going to be challenging. That never happened. It was wishy-washy from the very beginning. And I think at the local level, a really good example of this is County Commissioner Brian Hammond, right, who was saying, oh, we don't need this, we don't need that, and you know, we're just going to let this guy decide, or that level. It was never this kind of idea that we're all working together from federal to local level. We have this coordinated strategy on a goal. We recognize that this is a threat, and we recognize that this is the role that we can play, and this is what we're going to play. Now, Brian Hammond has coronavirus, as does, I believe, his wife, and now suddenly he's going, oh, well, everybody should really wear a mask and think about this and take care of your neighbor, right? And for me, it's just like, where were you several weeks ago when you're sitting on the county commission saying that we don't need to do this and everything is fine and everything is fine? Well, now it's not, and everybody should wear a mask, but I'm not going to make you wear a mask because freedom. So let's just, like I said, let's kind of understand this, because it is a nuance. We still do want local and home rule. We still do need people at the local level to talk about these issues, but we need to have it to be coordinated, and everybody needs to agree that there's a real risk, and then make the decisions in response to that risk, in response to the data, at the right times. And that's where we've lost it. And so I think that that's a really important differentiation, because like I said, Democrats who've been advocating for some of these policies are being, attacked from the other side for saying that they want to have, local rule and freedom. And we want that too, but we want everybody to be working off the same page and making decisions that are good for people at the right time. So Anselm, do you want to have a bit of a response on this? So tell us, what do you think in terms of, Governor DeSantis and how he's led the state during this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, his response has been just an undue failure of leadership. But I also don't think it strays too far from what his ideology and their agenda is. And I think what I mean by that is that the GOP for years has been trying to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the state government is still in a lawsuit against the Affordable Care Act. And they are the biggest contributors to our affordable housing crisis. They're the biggest contributors to disbanding unions. What this has been building this has just been years in the making, and this epidemic has just shown bare the problems in our state leadership, where we have not prioritized the needs of working people, and we've simply prioritized the biggest benefactors who, real estate developers, for all sorts of, for pharmaceutical companies. And I think
those are not my kids, by the way. Usually they are. If you hear children screaming in the background, they're usually mine, but not this time.
No, they're kids at the park.
Just go ahead and mute, Rachel. Yeah,
right.
And I think
we lost you there a little bit. Want to reel us back a little bit?
Oh, yeah. What I was going on, I just think not that I just think, but I'm very certain that the GOP agenda is not they're not a worker or poor or low income party. They're not ones who represent the needs of people who meet those demographics. And what have we seen is that they have no problem, they just cut $225 million from the state budget for affordable housing during this crisis, and have continued with their toll road production. This just lays bare the priorities of what the GOP is doing in Florida and just abroad. And at the local level, like you said, we need home rule. But what they're doing is that they're influenced local leaders like Brian Hammond or my opponent, Jason Mahon, who is a Sanibel City Council member who's now running in my race, who just went against the mask ordinance and appealed to Ron DeSantis as the reason why he went against that. And what we need is just, I don't think what this crisis has resulted in is rocket science. I think we should have just stayed home. We should have been provided rent relief. We should have provided universal health care from not just now, but till the end of time, because health care is a human right. And that's a big reason why I'm running, because I don't see these things being addressed. I see our environment being overdeveloped, and I see that people who are I live in San Carlos Park, which has a lot of contracted labor, and they don't have any benefits with their workplace. They can't simply say, well, I feel unsafe working in these conditions because I'm working in close proximity with each other. They'll just say, well, too bad. Do you want money? Do you want to pay rent? Do you want to live? This is a priority for a lot of these people, and they they're not going to change now, and they're certainly not going to change in the future. And so what we need is a big transformation of leadership to where we have people like Rachel, like you, like a whole bunch of people running in Florida who are running very progressive campaigns. We need these people in office so that we can start prioritizing the needs of working and low-income people over just simply reopen the economy for the sake of a few digits to the GDP, which is not a good indicator of the well-being of the people. Yeah, I think all of these things are just very emblematic of what the GOP agenda is and how it is not for people. It is very much for a very affluent few benefactors at the detriment of a bunch of working people, whether it's schools, whether it's tenants, whether it is union members or low-income workers, service sector employees. I think we need a whole revamp of the priorities of the state and, of course, the country across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're getting close to time here, and we didn't get as much time as we would want to talk about the other kind of crisis in leadership that we're seeing, and that's around, people being upset and reacting you know, to the murder of George Floyd, but also then, you know, from generalized oppression and police brutality, and the spinning up of the Black Lives Matter movement, the civil rights movement, the neo-civil rights movement that's coming from that. If you guys just each maybe want to talk a little bit about what you think about that and what's needed from leadership like yourselves coming into the state legislature, what is needed to address some of the concerns around that movement, that especially because Rachel, you know, I think all of us have been involved in the local movements and protests and rallies around it. So just speak, you know, just briefly a little bit about what your thoughts are on what's necessary from a leader to address some of those issues. Rachel?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most important thing is providing people protection, masks and face shields. That's the most important. If you give it to people, I think that they'll be more likely to actually wear things like that. Also being a good example, of course, you know, posting about coronavirus statistics, you know, so that people know, oh, I'm not just making this up. It's, you know, it's actually coming from a medical place, not from me, you know. So, you know, and just going to events and listening to what people have to say in the community. That's the most important thing. Of course, use you know, protection for your face, but yeah, listening to community members, hearing the voices that are unheard is the most important thing.
All right, yeah, and I wholeheartedly approve of that message as somebody who's dedicated large swaths of their academic and professional career to helping that happen across the board, bringing out the voice of regular people and making it matter in decisions. That's really been a passion of mine. Like I said, a good half of my dissertation is on it, because it really matters. And here's the thing that people lose in that, and I'll just give my little pitch on it, is a lot of people will say, oh, it's very, you know, the quote bleeding heart liberal kind of component of it, and you know, we just want to help everybody, but we have limited resources is usually their critique on it. What I come back at with when people say things like that is we actually, not only do we have a moral imperative to do it, we do have a moral imperative to do it. Let's not let that slide, right? We have a moral imperative to serve people. But if you want to take that kind of quote fiscal conservative component where they like to talk about things like efficiency, right? Actually taking the time to involve stakeholders in a process, whether you're in an organization, a community, or a business, engaging stakeholders in the process of decision making and planning makes you more effective and efficient in the long run. And that's borne out by fact and data. And that's why every single big business invests in these things. They invest in organization development. They invest in data because they know that it makes their business better. So we should be doing the exact same thing when we're talking about designing programs and policies for people. We should be involving those people and those stakeholders in the process. We should be using scientific methods to understand and gather data to address issues, and then using that information to inform the process. And somehow in government, we've forgotten that, and we just let that go in the sake of, you know, for the sake of fiscal conservatives, because it takes too long, or it's not fun, or it's not, we're going to learn something that we don't really want to address, which is, by the way, why we don't have these kind of processes already embedded in places like Fort Myers, is because there is a lack of political will to not only invest in it, but actually allow people to come to the table, because they don't want to hear it. Because as soon as somebody in the community says something that they don't like on a plan that they've already finished, right, and they've already put a bunch of money into it, they certainly don't want to let the community know about it, because then they have to backtrack and do something different. Okay, so that's really what we're looking at here, and this goes just kind of all the way up the chain. There's not even really great participatory practices on how we influence state policy or national policy. That is something that I want to change, because like I said, it's a passion for me, it's a commitment of mine, and I have the tools to be able to do it. So I hope that if you're really somebody who cares about the voice of the people, I'm the candidate for you for sure. And so let's hear from Anselm before we wrap up here. Anselm, tell us a little bit about what you think somebody like yourself who's running for the state legislature can contribute in terms of leadership, particularly around the social movement we're seeing around Black Lives Matter.
Of course. For one, I'll just start with my background. I got involved in college with the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, which is also a part of the Drug Policy Alliance. And the biggest thing that has gotten me riled up over the years is understanding war on drugs and the mass incarceration. And this goes to your larger point about fiscal conservatism, that Republicans across the board are not actually fiscally conservative. They tend to be very proactive on spending for things like our criminal justice system. Millions of people.
Oh, Anselm, you're coming in and out a little bit there.
Okay. Can you all hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, so more of the same. Yeah, I think what we need to do to address the inequities between Black and brown people is to look, one, at the criminal justice system and understand that it is deeply embedded in racism. That, I mean, you can look to Nixon in 1973 discussing his approach to war on drugs was a means to criminalize hippies with marijuana and criminalize Black people with heroin, and then in the 80s, of course, crack cocaine. I would like, my policy prescription for criminal justice programs is to decriminalize drug possession charges so that people should not be locked up for drug possession. They should be provided rehabilitation if they need it. And also look at drug trafficking charges on a case-by-case basis, whether people are partaking in drug dealing because they're low income. And then, the larger reason why people are going to drug dealing as a function of their income is because there's not opportunities within their communities. I mean, we've made it insanely hard we have property taxes tied to education. So if you're in a low-income area, namely a low-income area that's been redlined and robbed of housing loans from the government, from the banks in these areas, namely like Dunbar, Sarasota with Newtown, and Tampa and Miami and Orlando, we need to provide affordable housing. We need to provide education that is of the best quality and is the same kind of funding as other predominantly white, wealthier schools. We need to provide universal health care, as we've seen that the coronavirus has waged much.
Oh, we lost you there, too.
Oh, no. Where did you last hear me?
Coronavirus.
Yeah, the coronavirus has waged specifically very much in Black and brown communities and has made it's really ravaged those areas. And we need to talk about things like universal programs like affordable housing and healthcare. But on top of that, we need to indict the criminal justice system and redirect funds from police departments. For instance, the city budget for the police department is, I believe, 30 to 40% budget, whereas affordable housing
is going out a little bit again.
Oh, no. Can you all hear me?
Right there, we can.
Right, and I think, I'll just wrap up just so, for the sake of time. What we need is a real revamp of our entire priorities, because we prioritize policing and prosecuting people for low-tier crimes and drug crimes, not even really crimes, just drug possession. And we need to prioritize the needs of all low-income people, but understand that communities of people of color have been marginalized historically and are still facing those historical problems because we've never dealt with them in the first place. So that is my approach. And coronavirus is just these protests, I think, are just the spark of a larger issue, as people have not seen their needs addressed and they need real relief now. And that is what my campaign will do. We'll aim to look at all these problems and understand them and lift up low-income people across the board, but also specifically look at where our policies have directly targeted Black and brown communities. And we need to revamp that completely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you to the audience for sending in your questions. We did get to a handful of those questions. I think that all of us, because we strive so much to be servants of the people, if you have additional follow-up questions, we would love to hear them from you. You can email me at vote@cindybanyai.com. You can actually get to my website through right here too, cindy4swfl.com. I am somebody who is always looking for additional support too. So if you're ready to jump in and volunteer, we have virtual volunteers because my campaign is virtual until there is no more coronavirus, because I don't want my daughter to die. And I think that a lot of people have family members that they also don't want to infect with the coronavirus. So we are virtual. We do have some folks who are helping to reach out a little bit more for us. And you'll hear more from our friends here today about that as well. But, if you want to volunteer, and also, like Rachel and Anselm, they said earlier, we're grassroots candidates. And so every single dollar helps and matters to us. So if you are in a position to contribute to my campaign or any of our campaigns, we absolutely would appreciate that. You can find me on ACLU. And now the next question then is, how can people help you? Both Rachel and Anselm, how can people help you, and where can they find more information about you, and how else can they support you in your campaign? Rachel, go ahead and tell us that again. I know you started off with it, but tell us once again as we wrap up, and give us some additional closing words from you.
Sure, yeah, you can go on my website. It's Rachel Brown for Florida Senate.com. Again, it's Rachel Brown, Rachel, Brown like the color, for Florida Senate.com, and it's all spelled out. And everything's on there. You can also check out my Facebook page. If you type in Rachel Brown Florida on Facebook, you'll see a picture of me with an American flag in the background, and I post a lot of updates about my campaign and volunteer opportunities on there as well.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Anselm?
Yeah, you can, like I reiterated earlier, my website is Anselm Weber State House 76, ANSELM Weber with 1B, statehouse76.com. And there's a donate button. There's also a volunteer section where you can sign up. And hopefully in the next coming weeks, we will get access to voters all across the district. And we can start calling people. Like Cindy, I'm not trying to get out in the field right now, but we will be calling voters, talking about our campaigns, talking about what we plan to do for the state and the district at large. And hopefully we can turn things around and put people and the environment over profits of big sugar, big ag, and other industries that do not need our tax money to go towards them, but that money desperately needs to go to working people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I am so happy that we are in the fight together. We have endorsed one another, so we are supporting each other. We're pooling our resources together so that we can flip these districts and truly build a Southwest Florida where the sun shines on everyone. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Anselm. And thank you to our guests. And thanks to those of you who will be watching this at a later date. We are here and ready to fight for you. So come join with us. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody, as well. Have a great evening.